Hi friends, it's Katya. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video has been a long time coming. It's been a long time since I have chatted with you guys about the things that I've been reading recently. So this will be a wrap up of some books that I have read in the past few months. I'll be reviewing books that I read in February and March, and of course these book reviews are going to come to you in the form of pro-con lists. I had so much fun with that format last time I did this video. I'll put the lists right up over here so you can clearly see what I liked about the books, what I disliked about the books. And with that, let's get right on into it. First book that I'm going to talk about is Thornhedge by Kingfisher. I thought this was such a fun twist on Sleeping Beauty. We follow a character who is tasked with kind of protecting the Sleeping Beauty character, preventing people from coming in and waking her up. And there happens to be a deeper and more complicated meaning for her not wanting anyone to reach Sleeping Beauty. I thought it was a really fun, like I said, twist on the fairy tale, and a lot of it was really unexpected as I moved through the book. I was consistently really surprised by the story and by the characters. I loved the main characters and their dynamics so much. My con, the one thing that really didn't land for me, was the ending. I just felt a little bit underwhelmed, and I think that had to do a lot with the fact that it built so well that it would have been difficult for any ending to be satisfying compared to the rest of the book. Overall, I still thought it was really strong and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Our Wives Under the Sea is a speculative, very creepy, weird novel about our main character, Miri, whose wife goes on a submarine expedition because she's a scientist and she's doing some sort of research down at the bottom of the ocean, and she disappears for, I think, 6 months. She was supposed to be gone for a few weeks and she's just stuck at the bottom of the ocean for a long time, and when she comes back, she's acting very weird. She'll go into the bathroom and just sit in the bathtub for hours. She'll stare at water. She's like guzzling salt water. Her gums start bleeding, her eyes and her pores start bleeding, and Miri doesn't really know what to do. This is a really slow moving book, and I think that has both its positives and its negatives. It was super haunting and hypnotizing, but I could see some people thinking it was a little bit boring. It did take me a long time to read, but I think it was a really rewarding experience to move through it because it was so atmospheric and immersive. I think I would have liked the ending to have a little bit more punch, but I don't think that that was the goal of the book. I think the goal was to create a mood and a feeling, and it definitely evoked such, like I said, this hypnotizing, haunting, dread-filled experience, and I really enjoyed it. I also read You with the View, which I had such high expectations for, and unfortunately it did let me down a little bit. I used to own this book, but I recently sold it to my half-price books because I knew that I'm just never going to pick it up again. This book follows our main character, Noelle, who finds a photo of her grandmother with this man. It's like a very old vintage photo of her grandmother, I think in her early 20s. And the man in the photo is a man who Noelle didn't know her grandmother had dated, and it's like this long lost love. So she goes onto TikTok, Noelle does, not the grandmother, and asks people to try to track down this old man because the grandmother has recently died, and Noelle is looking for more people who had connections to her. Long story short, the person who reaches out knowing the man in the photo is actually Noelle's high school nemesis, and it's his grandfather in the photo. And so they all eventually decide to go on this road trip that the grandmother had planned out years and years before, and it makes them all feel more connected to her, and it's very sweet. And Noelle and the high school nemesis end up falling for each other as the week that they're on vacation together goes on. I thought that the premise of this book sounded so much fun. I really enjoy a rivals to lovers story, and that's what this was pitched to me as. Noelle and Theo, the high school nemesis in question, were I think like tennis rivals and academic rivals, but the thing that didn't work for me was that their rivalry was very much in the past, and they kept telling us that they were rivals, but I didn't really feel that tension between them at all. Also, the characters got together, I felt, really fast. I think it was like maybe halfway through the book, and it really just broke all the tension for me. I kind of started losing interest in their relationship. Also, my least favorite thing about this book was that the third act conflict, like their breakup, was really based almost entirely on dishonesty and miscommunication. And I understand like them being uncomfortable opening up to one another, but the fact that they were just like keeping things from each other and lying to each other was really frustrating, and I didn't enjoy it at all. Like, that is definitely, I'm finding, one of my pet peeves in books. Not even necessarily miscommunication, because I can understand miscommunication more than I can understand dishonesty. Like, I just have no patience for it in my real life or in my books, and so I didn't really buy buy into the romance, and if I can't buy into the romance of a book, then I'm not going to like the book as a whole, especially if it is a rom-com. I will say that I did really enjoy the side characters. I thought they were really fun, especially the grandpa character. I loved him. And then I also really enjoyed the conversations surrounding grief. I thought that they were really well done, really graceful. Okay, next we're going to talk about Happily Never After by Lynn Painter, another rom-com, and unfortunately another one that did let me down. This follows two characters who have this business where they go to people's weddings and will object in order to get people out of the wedding. So when the officiant says speak now or forever hold your peace, they're the people who actually stand up and interrupt and stop the wedding. Which, I was thinking about this, I don't think I've ever been to a wedding where they actually gave people the opportunity to speak now or forever hold their peace. Every wedding I've ever been to has just kind of skipped over that. I thought this premise was so fun. Also, one of the characters has a pair of roommates who are elderly people who she's living with to save money, and I thought they were so funny. I did have a lot of cons for this book. I thought there was a lot of telling and not showing. They would talk about how, like, oh, we have such strong chemistry and we're so into each other and our kisses are so good or whatever, and I didn't feel it. They told me that their chemistry was good, but I didn't see it. I didn't understand why their connection was more special than a connection with literally anyone else. I don't think that they showed me or proved to me why they were a good couple. I think that that's something that I run into with romance novels so often, is they'll say, oh, we are a good match, but why are you a good match? You know, like, what is it about these two characters that makes them good for each other? That is what creates a good romance novel, in my opinion. I also found the characters to really act very inconsistently. It was hard to place them because sometimes they acted in ways that felt out of character to how they were described before. So it was hard for me to feel like I was really getting to know them because I wasn't able to get a good read on their personalities. I was overall very disappointed with this. I think I loved Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, but since then I've not really enjoyed any of the books that I read by her. I think I gave this 2 stars. I also read, oh my goodness, February and March were my a quart of whatever months. I read books 2 through 5, but I was reading these for book club with Chloe and I thought they were so much fun. I was really, I guess, frustrated at myself for waiting so long to actually pick up these books because I've heard people rave about them for so long, and I don't know, I guess I thought that I wouldn't enjoy them, or I assumed that they'd be overrated, but I had a really good time, especially with A Court of Mist and Fury, book 2 in the series. My pros were how much I loved all of the new characters who were introduced. We meet a whole new cast of characters in Valaris, which is the new city that our main character travels to. I'm not going to say too much about the plot, not only because it's the second book in the series, but also because this series is so popular. I'm sure that people already kind of have an idea of what is going on in these books, but I was really glued to the page in this book especially. It was so action-packed. I was so invested in the action that was happening and in the characters and their relationships. My negative, on the other hand, has mostly to do with Tamlin as a character, who was the love interest in the first book, but he took such a sharp turn into villainhood that felt just kind of one-dimensional, and I would have appreciated if his character and that relationship was treated with just a little bit more nuance, but it felt like Sarah J Maas kind of just had to get him out of the way and therefore made him into an almost cartoonish kind of villain. And I know that that happens in real life and people are not always what they seem, but I think that frustrated me, and I would have liked for that character to have a few more layers rather than just being this cartoonish villain so suddenly. I just like when characters are treated with a little bit more nuance and depth, if that makes sense. I read Something Close to Magic by Emma Mills. I've loved Emma Mills in the past. She wrote Foolish Hearts, which is one of my favorite YA contemporaries. This book follows our main character, Aurelie. She works at a bakery and she ends up being kind of roped into this quest to rescue a prince called Prince Hapless. My favorite thing about this book was the found family aspect. There's so many really fun side characters who Aurelie becomes friends with, and the banter and conversations with them were so much fun to just be in the middle of. It was also just a very cozy, fun, adventurous world to be in. My cons, on the other hand, were that it was pretty predictable, all things considered. The characters felt very much like one-to-one comparisons of Foolish Hearts, and maybe I was able to make that comparison because I love Foolish Hearts so much and I remember it so well, but all of the character dynamics and kind of just like the arc of the way things went reminded me a lot of this book. So it kind of felt like a fantasy version of Foolish Hearts. And I don't necessarily think that that is a bad thing, but it did make it pretty predictable. But if you like fantasy and you enjoyed that book or YA contemporaries generally, I would definitely recommend this. Okay, moving on into more A Court of Thorns and Roses series books. I'll try to move through these really fast, but I read A Court of Wings and Ruin. I read it so fast and I tried to take notes, but I have written as my prose Lucian. Lucian had a larger part in this book and he's one of my favorite characters in the series, so I loved that he was there. Other pros include characters besides Lucian. I also really enjoyed Nesta and Elaine and getting to see them a little bit more in this book. I think this is the book where they visit the summer court, and I just really enjoy when they go to new places and I can see new settings. My con, and this was a big con, is the lack of stakes in this book. I think they had this like big battle for the war at the end of the book, and I don't want to act like oh, I'm so upset that nobody died, but I am kind of upset that nobody died. They talk about everything being so dangerous and so devastating, and oh, this is like the worst battle that we've ever had, but like everybody who almost died came back. Everybody who something bad happened to were fine by the end. The one character who did die was such a side, superfluous character who did not matter. I was like, why do I care that this character is gone? Not to sound heartless, but as the book went on, and Chloe and I talked about this too when we read it together, it made me feel like less invested, because now moving through the books, I feel like I know that the worst thing will not happen and everybody will be fine. Like, I feel like Sarah J. Maas will not be willing to kill off any of these characters, so whenever something dangerous happens, I'm like, I don't even care. I know that things will be fine. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but when an author tries to raise the stakes and then doesn't let anything happen as a result of that, it feels like a fake out. It feels like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. This is so dangerous, this is so bad, but then nothing happens. It's just kind of a letdown, and it lowers the stakes and makes me care less. But overall, I did give this 3 stars, and I think that has a lot to do with the ending and how just kind of underwhelming it was. I also read A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is kind of the Christmas special novella. It really felt like a Christmas episode where nothing happened. I was so just frustrated that this book exists, and I know that people probably really love it, and I'm so sorry if you love it. I thought it was super boring and unnecessary and fluff and didn't need to exist. I actually didn't write down any pros. I guess the pro would be if you like these characters, you get to spend more time with them. And I mean, I like the characters, but I just found this book to be so pointless. Okay, let's talk about A Court of Silver Flames right away as well. My pro is Nesta's development. I thought she was such a fun character to watch grow, especially because she started from such a low place. My cons, I think this book is way too long. I think it needed to be edited down so much, especially some of the more intimate scenes. I enjoyed them at first, and then they just kept going and going and going, and it was like every other chapter. And I said, isn't this like excessive? Can we calm down? Can we cut out a few of these scenes, because we're at page like 150 and nothing has happened plot-wise. I thought the ending was extremely cheesy. Again, there were such low stakes in this book, I felt, because I knew that everybody was going to be fine. Even when the characters were in danger, I said, this doesn't matter, they'll be fine. And I think that that's really frustrating in a fantasy series when I'm not like invested in these characters' fates, because I don't think that anything bad will actually happen. My other pro is that Cassian is my new favorite character in this series. I thought he was so much fun, and I was glad that he had a much larger role in this book so that I could spend more time with him. Okay, moving out of the Sarah J. Maas world, I read Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I loved this so much, and I didn't expect to. I started this book, I read maybe 2 chapters, and I said, this is a little cheesy for me. I don't know if I can get through this. This character's a little bit childish. I don't really like it. But I decided to give it a second chance. I started with, I think, chapter 3 or something like that right before bed. I said, I'll try to read another chapter, and if I don't like it, I'll DNF and I'll put it away. And starting that night, I ended up finishing the whole book because something about it just hooked me. And I finished it, I think, at 3 in the morning. And I don't even know how it convinced me in those few chapters that I got like so invested when I was so apprehensive at the beginning of the book. But these characters are so charming. We follow Annie, who is a flower shop owner, and Will, who is a bodyguard. And this is actually the second book in the series. I read it first and I went back and I read the first book later. And I think when you read a romance companion series like this, it doesn't really matter the order in which you read things, because you kind of know that the characters are going to get together by the end, so it's not really a spoiler to know that the couple from the first book is together in the second book. But Annie, the flower shop owner, is the sister of the main love interest in the first book, and she, like I said, owns a flower shop. She loves to read pirate romance novels. She's very shy, very quiet, has historically had sort of a goody two-shoes persona, and has not dated very much. And she ends up getting dating practice with Will, the bodyguard. And I'm just discovering that that is one of my favorite tropes. I love fake dating. I love when somebody is trying to like teach somebody else how to date. That also happens in The Kiss Quotient, which is back here, another one of my favorite romances. I had so much fun with this. I adored the characters. It takes place in a very small town, so there's a very eclectic Stars Hollow-esque sort of cast of characters surrounding them as well. And I'm already excited to reread it and visit these characters again because I had such a blast with them. I also found it to be really swoon-worthy despite being closed door, which means that there weren't any like on-page sex scenes. And there was a scene where I think they were just like holding hands or brushing hands, and I was so invested. I thought their chemistry was so strong, and I think that's a really good skill to have as an author, to be able to write such convincing chemistry without any intimate scenes. I definitely felt the chemistry between these characters a lot more than I have in lots of other books with actual on-page intimate scenes, and so I thought that was such a strength that Sarah Adams displayed. She also displayed that strength in When in Rome, which of course I went back and read after I loved Practice Makes Perfect so much. This book follows our main character Noah. Like I said, he's Annie's brother. He lives in this small town. He owns a pie shop. He's a very grumpy character in contrast with the sunshiny love interest main character, who is a pop star named Amelia, who comes to this small town to kind of hide out for a bit because she's very stressed out by her famous pop star life. Again, my pros for this book are the characters, the fact that it was so fast to read, the chemistry between the characters. My one big negative was that the conflict felt so forced. Noah didn't want to date Amelia because she was famous and he didn't want to move away, and he was uncomfortable being long distance, right? Like, these are all understandable things, but he got over it so fast, like for no reason. He just kind of decided, no, it's fine, like we can date. And so the conflict felt kind of fake, I guess, because it was such a non-issue in the end. So that was just kind of annoying, but I mean, I was glad that they ended up getting together, and I thought that they were a really cute couple. Okay, and those are all of the books that I'm going to be talking about in this video. Thank you so much for watching and spending time with me. I really appreciate you. Let me know your pros and cons for any of the books that I mentioned in this video. If you've read them as well, I'd love to know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell to be notified of the next time I post, and I'll see you in my next video.